gaps in our industry. I am Laurie Moore, your host, and I am joined today by these three amazing panelists who I will introduce to you in just a moment. The generation gap is a natural phenomenon that arises from the differences in experiences, values, perspectives between different age groups. According to research by Deloitte, different generations' approaches to technology, communication, and work ethics are most difficult aspects of working together. So we will be discussing how we can best meet the needs of different generations, the importance of focusing on common ground to build trust, and ways to communicate, to think outside the box, to engage long tenured employees. So let me introduce our panel to you. Sitting here to my side, we have Nina Bui, Regional Sales Manager from SOC 101. She is the manager for the West Coast, and she has been in the industry for 1.5 years. So she is new to our industry, so we will have a nice fresh perspective. She is a new board member at PMANC and co-chair of marketing. She loves anything involving food and cooking. I can get on with that. And she loves trying new restaurants. Nina enjoys art, music, and dancing in her free time. Another dancer. We do a lot of dancing in this booth. Yes. And next to Nina, we have Brandon Pecharich, who some of you may recognize. This will be Brandon's 20th year in the promotional products industry. He is most known for his daily product show, Promo Day, which is hosted right here on promojournal.com. He was named the PPB Rising Star in 2020 and SAGME 40 Under 40 in 2022. He has spoken on many in-person stages at Common SKUs, SKUCon, PPAI's Expo Conference, SAGME's Promotions East, and several smaller regional shows. He is marrying his best friend and an awesome lady who I dearly love coming up in March. So welcome, Brandon. And sitting at the very end of our table, we have Cliff Quickell. Cliff is president of Cliff Quickell Associates and Quickell Speaks. His tenure in the promotional industry spans 4 decades. Very impressive. Fun fact about Cliff, he is the only CSP, certified speaking professional, in our industry. That's impressive. Nice. He was inducted into the PPAI Hall of Fame in 2022, received the inaugural Distinguished Service Award, and is the recipient of over 50 industry awards for creative marketing projects. He is a sports enthusiast, an avid tennis player, skier, and holds a 3rd degree black belt in Taekwondo.
All right. So I'm not going to.
Yeah. So behave yourself, Brandon.
I'll be gentle.
He also loves to cook, and he is a proud contributor to promojournal.com. He has a column called Cliff's Notes, and he has been writing for us for over 18 years. So that is pretty impressive.
Just getting started.
Just getting started. Yes. Yep. All right. So we're going to start with a little bit of fun. We're going to do an icebreaker, and this is just going to be a rapid fire. We're going to get to know a little bit about our panelists today. So we'll just go right down the line.
Perfect.
Pumping gas, full service or self-service?
Self-service.
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 All right. Desk, messy or neat?
Messy.
Very neat.
Neat.
What's one workplace habit or behavior that instantly annoys you?
When other people leave their stuff on my messy desk.
Talking too loud, even though I do that.
Indecision.
What was your first job?
A hostess at a restaurant.
Dietary aid at a old folks home.
When I was 6, I folded pizza boxes for pizza and $5 every Saturday.
Nice. What time do you usually wake up in the morning?
6 a.m.
About 5:30.
4 o'clock.
Oh, early risers. That's interesting. All right, talk or text? What is your preference?
Text.
Text.
Talk.
All right. And do you think society is improving?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
What has been your favorite age so far?
I don't have one yet.
25.
Right now.
Yeah.
All right. Are you active on social media?
Yes.
Very.
Extremely.
All right. And the last rapid fire question, at what age would you like to retire?
50.
Tomorrow.
Never.
Huh? All right, let's get into some of these questions and see what their thoughts and perspectives are on this generational gap. All right. First of all, before we start, what category would you put yourself in for the generational breakdown?
Millennial.
So I'm technically a millennial, but I'm more of a zennial because I didn't have the internet for like the first 10, 12 years of my life.
Well, if I knew what that question meant, I could answer you, but I guess I would fall into the OG category. So that's me.
Oh, geez, yes. Oh, geez. All right. So there you have it. 3 distinct age groups here with, I'm sure, different perspectives. So let's see. In what ways do you feel your generation perceives work, success, and career progression?
What I find interesting about my generation is when back in the day, I think what really is a differentiator for our generation is that when you said you were going to do something, that's all you had to do is say it. If I said that I was going to do something for Brandon, I could shake his hand, and that meant more than signing a PO. And I think that is where that's a big difference, that we trusted each other when your word meant something, and you didn't have to worry about, is the person going to be honest, loyal, and considerate. They were just, when they said it, it meant a difference. It's like when the basic things, when you used to say thank you, yes ma'am, yes sir. Like my son's a Navy pilot, and to this day he says to, it's not as his mom, as my wife, he says yes ma'am. It's that type of habit that I think is a little bit different. And nowadays when you see it, when somebody says thank you, it's almost, or holds the door for someone, it's almost like it's a shocker.
Yeah.
And when that used to be the norm, now it's not the norm, and I think that's a big difference.
And before you pass that on, Cliff, how do you think your generation perceives success?
I don't know about my generation, but I look at success as having my health, having a strong work-life balance, putting my wife and my kids first, my friends second, my job last. For me, that's a balanced life and a balanced work life. Yeah.
I mean, same. That was going to be my answer. Is like happiness and self happiness, like taking care of yourself first. My generation, especially, like we had a lot of friends and we had great parents in a generation before us that taught us the hard work ethic. But as we are getting older, I just turned 40, but for the past 10 years, I've been looking for something that just fulfills me internally and mentally, right? Instead of just a paycheck, I'm looking for something that is like making me happy. And so I'll take less money to be happy, and I still consider that success.
Good point.
So I think it's a little different for millennials because I think a lot of us are kind of influenced by the Gen Z team, and they're a little bit more rebellious, a little bit more kind of loud and out there. I think there's still a bit of I think there's still hard work ethics just from, the previous generations. I think we were kind of grilled onto that work ethic, go to school, do your job. But I think what now you're seeing more is that millennials, since they're starting to be the kind of the bosses in the career space, you see more work-life balance. You see, bosses are a little bit more understanding. It's not needing to be like, you can take your mental health day and it's okay. And no one's looking at anyone funny. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that they're realizing work-life balance is a big thing. And I think kind of like the millennials kind of push that to really bring that into the workspace. Success-wise is kind of a mix of things. I think, I think with millennials, I think the biggest thing is finding what you do to love, like what you can do every day and not be sick of it. And obviously paying the bills and being like financially free. I think that's kind of the big focus for a lot of people in my age range. I think a lot of us have, didn't really learn that in school or anything like that. They don't teach you how to, balance credit cards or anything like that. So I think that's like the biggest thing right now is like the success of financial freedom for sure.
Excellent.
Can I just add,
Yes.
it was one thing that I've noticed in this industry, and I do a lot of work outside this industry, but what's interesting is the younger people, I think, have a better work ethic in this industry than a lot of people outside of this industry. And it's really, it's because I deal with a lot of them in a lot of different roles, and it's really refreshing to see young people that take charge but are responsible and are not whiny and that want things and feel like everything's being handed to them. And I just find that very, very refreshing in this industry.
Excellent. All right, next up, how do you feel communication styles differ across generations?
I mean, Cliff hit it. Nina and I both said text, and he said talk. I think that's the biggest gap in the communication. I would rather hit you up in your DMs or on an instant messenger or a text message or Snapchat than figure out what the green button on my cell phone is to make a phone call, or if I'm calling the right one, or am I supposed to leave a voicemail or not. Like, the phone has almost become foreign to me, but I grew up with a home phone. My niece and nephew aren't going to have a home phone. There's no home phone to call. Everybody has a cell phone. So I think talk and text is the big gap in actual communication.
I think if you're focusing communication into the workspace, I feel like a lot of us use the text and the email as like a way to kind of refer back to something. Because I think, a lot of people can say things and it could be misconstrued or taken something differently. So it's kind of like a nice way to be a callback and just have like kind of information like readily there, and you can refer back to it as like a proof almost.
Yeah, that's great. But I think sometimes people get wrapped up in that level of communication and forget they can pick up the phone and call someone. Like I hear this all the time. Well, I sent an email 3 days ago. What did you think? Did they respond?
Right.
Did they get it? Do you think maybe picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, I sent you an email," and have the reference? Yeah. That's good, but communicate. Be human.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I hear a lot of times people get annoyed. Why didn't they just call? Or why didn't they just this? So how can we work better across our generations to respect and appreciate the different communications?
How about asking?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brandon, you and I are going to be doing work together. How do you like to be communicated with? Would you prefer email, text messages, or can I call you on the phone? Cliff, I will only respond to emails. Fine. That's perfect. But if you're not asking the question, how do you know?
Yep.
That's my answer too. Absolutely. Ask. Meet them where they're at, right? Ask them what they're comfortable with, how they communicate, and then there will be no communication gap.
And don't be annoyed with their response.
100%.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a lot of that too. Somebody can say, I prefer to be texted or I prefer email, and then people get annoyed.
Yeah.
Because it's not their mode of communication. Right. So respecting each other's choices and how to communicate and communicating that with each other. All right.
Up front.
Yes. Before you start.
Exactly.
Yes. Before there's an issue. All right. How do you feel your generation overall adapts to technological changes in the workplace? And how can organizations ensure a smooth transition for everyone?
I'm a little bit different, but I think the OG generation is very apprehensive about technological changes. I think in order to make the transition, you should have training and education in place and also extol the virtues of why it will help instead of like throwing it out there to the wind. My mom's 82 years old and she can text probably as good as you. She's amazing. So, it's just a matter of people and understanding the why it's important.
Yeah.
And that it's another way to communicate with people.
I think you would think millennials kind of assume right away that, technology is a go, yes, yes. But I think it's very dependent on, is this going to make it easier for me? Because I think there's times where there's a whole bunch of different tech things being introduced in the workspace or office where it's like, okay, this just made my job harder. Like, is this going to make it easier? I think that's where it kind of lines up, whether like people want more tech or don't want more tech. And it's also like how easy it is, because even though, millennials or youngers may look to be tech savvy, I've met so many millennials that aren't tech savvy and not very self-sufficient on that way as well. So it's really, I think, dependent on how simple and easy it is.
So I think for the Zennial generation, I think because we went from having no internet to having internet, we're more accepting to new ways of organization and the technology. And so I'm quick to jump on technology and I'm quick to learn it, but I do exactly what you just said. I try and figure out which one's the best one that's going to work for me. I think you take a mixture of what Cliff said about meeting people where they are and ask them how they like to communicate. And then as a company or as an organization, then you have to pick one, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody say, well, I sent you a DM on Instagram. Well, I was looking in Facebook Messenger. Oh, maybe it was on Snapchat. Well, now that's deleted. Was it on Slack? Was it in Teams? Like, there's so many different ways to communicate, but we don't communicate. I say that all the time. We have such a hard time, like, doing all that.
Asking.
Right. And we're not asking. And there's so many different technologies out there, but I think you just got to make sure it's the one that you're actually going to use.
Well, imagine what I've gone through, starting from the can and the string to where we are today.
That's true one-to-one communication.
As long as the string doesn't break, you're in good shape.
Have any of you mentored or worked with someone from a different generation to help them with some of these challenges?
Yeah.
And do you feel that companies should have a mentor-mentee program in place when they are undergoing big technological
100%.
changes?
Easily.
Yes.
I'd be interested to see how many companies out there actually do.
Right.
It's funny. I find that the businesses that are owned by older people, because they're apprehensive to change, not all, but apprehensive to change, they're less likely to implement a program like that. And again, I think you just need to be open to the possibilities of how it's going to, for improvements, systems improvements and things like that. It could be a big difference. So unless you're willing to embrace it, it could all fall apart.
Mm-hmm. Are there generational differences in the desire for flexible work arrangements? And if so, do you have any suggestions for how this can be managed?
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of tying back to like the Gen Zers kind of influence on the millennials. I think everyone's really looking hard for that hybrid kind of schedule. I think there's people that still love and go into their office. That's what they need to focus. But I think it's kind of tying back to that work-life balance. Like, can I work from home and throw a load of laundry and I don't have to wait to do it at 8 p.m. at night? Like, I could just get it done now. So I think just learning that balance, like, I think it's just very dependent on your type of work and the culture itself. And I feel like, there's certain groups that may work very efficiently on their own at home, or there's some that's like, hey, it's better if we collaborate in the office. We get, the interactions with everyone important, because at the end of the day, I think human interaction is important regardless. So I think it's always nice to have that at least one day where you do go see everyone in the office and connect with your coworkers and, collaborating ideas. I think that's like the biggest important thing for that balance too, and the work, efficiency wise as well.
Just getting the work done. If you get your work done, I don't care where you're working from. If you're in the office or if you're at home or if you're out in a coffee shop. We all know what happened in 2020. We don't need to talk about it, but I think that also brought all of the generations a lot closer. Had that not happened, I think there'd be a much bigger gap because there wouldn't have been the education to learn the new technology, to understand that little dot on your computer is not for the CIA to spy on you. It's actually to communicate with your new customers. So in terms of, does there need to be something in place? Like, what'd you say? What was the last part of the question? Like,
do you have any suggestions on how this can be managed?
I mean, if the work's not getting done, that's the only way to manage. You just got to look if the things are getting done, if you're doing what you say you're going to do, then you can work from wherever.
I think the older generation is apprehensive to this because everybody's always going to work. I will just say one thing. I think you all would agree, hopefully, it takes a unique individual to work independently like that.
Mhm.
And I think that's the apprehension that all of a sudden, are you really working and I'm paying you?
Mhm.
And so again, I mean, I just look at it, I understand both sides. I think it's important. And my wife will look at me and she goes, you are just like, when you get up in the morning, you're at it. But I think that it just takes not that I'm unique, but I think it takes a unique individual to do that. And I think that's where the apprehension lies on the older generation looking at people working at home.
And if you had your choice, just quick response, would you prefer fully remote or would you prefer a hybrid situation?
I think I would just prefer a hybrid. Like I said, I love to collaborate with my coworkers and other people, and I think going through a screen can only be so. It's not the same always. I think it's important to kind of absorb everybody else's energy and excitement and feeling that in a room with someone. I think it isn't. You can't replicate that through a screen.
I'm fully remote, and I wish everybody could be fully remote. But just like Cliff said, my best friend is an accountant, and he's like, dude, if I worked from home, I wouldn't get anything done. So I'm fully remote.
That's why I get up at 4. Because from 4 to 8, I get more done in 3 hours than I would. But I love working remotely from home. Love it.
And do you feel that leadership styles vary across generations?
I think so, but I think there's a mix of it. I think it's also dependent on the person itself. But like I said, I think the millennial generation, we're starting to be in the space of being the boss, the whatever HR, the leads. You can tell there's more empathy, I think, and there's more realness in it. There's more of a rawness, I think it's nice that someone could tell you the honest, hey, my stomach is actually upset. I don't want to flood the office bathroom. Can I please be at home today? And it's easily yes, of course. There's no need to be a sick day. There's not need to have this all extra thing from it.
I don't think I'm going to answer.
So I think the definition of a bad boss differs from generation to generation. I think the older generation, the bad bosses, they don't have less empathy. They're more a slave driver, if you will, right? But as you start to get these younger managers, they are not checking in. They are not keeping you held to your tasks and all that. So I think that the definition of a good or a bad manager, it does change across the generations.
I don't know. I look at what makes a real leader, what makes a real boss, and that is somebody that is open to the possibilities and has balance. And if you can, and trust. And if you can trust, and I think that unfortunately, I think for my generation, there is a lack of trust, and that's a shame. But I think that creates a severe gap in many cases.
With that, okay, we're going to wrap this up with a little bit of fun. Each of the panelists has a paddle in front of them, and one side says agree, and the other side says disagree. And we have a visitor. We're live right now. Maybe we could interview him on his thoughts. Thanks for stopping by. All right, we're going to use the paddles, and this first group of statements are how the older generation often perceives the younger generation. So you are going to either agree with the statement or disagree with it. You just have to show your paddle to the camera, and that's it.
Perfect.
So this is how the older generation often perceives the younger. Tech savvy but impatient. Next one. Innovative and creative. Next one, desire for work-life balance. Need for constant feedback. Interesting. All right, next one, socially conscious.
Oh. I know. Can I do this?
All right, team oriented. Okay. And the last one, impulsive. All right. This next bank of questions or statements are how the younger generation often perceives the older generation. They provide experience and wisdom. Next one, resistant to change. Next one, they have a strong work ethic.
Yeah.
How the younger generation perceives the older, that the older generation has a strong work ethic. All right. Effective communication skills. Commitment to the company. Structured approach to work. And the last one, professionalism and formality.
Formality, yeah.
All right.
That's another one of
I
these.
know.
All right, so these are all perceptions and they should be viewed with an open mind. Generalizations about any generation may not hold true for every individual. Effective communication and understanding between different generations can help bridge gaps. So at the end of the day, we all need to be communicating.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I was entertained. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you, dear.